Hi guys, for those of you who weren't able to make our tutorial today, here is a brief summary of how we're going to approach section B of your exam, which is the source-based section. This is 1/3 of the exam, and so we want to do it as well as we can to acquire as many marks as possible towards our total to get ourselves a scholarship. So Section B, as it's called, Section A is the set topics based on what you're studying in class, has two main themes. The first main theme, which is the one we're doing, is culture and identity, focused on gender and society. And the second one is empire and power, focusing on authority and freedom. I'm not preparing you guys for this because it's not my area of expertise / interest, but if you want to have a look at it yourself, you're more than welcome to. And you need to decide whether you're going to look at either ancient Greece or ancient Rome. So to do well in this one, what you really need to do is really analyze the sources closely, look at them in detail. Don't just memorize and regurgitate the stuff that we've done in our Term 1 tutorials. They're all about background knowledge to help you interpret these sources. So the two things that we need to work on over the next two terms, and what I'm going to talk to you about in this video is skills for us to develop. So number one, how do we look at and interpret primary source evidence for this exam? And number two, how on earth do we write about it? So I've got a couple of frameworks. I've got this from Ms. Kovac in the history department. She's helped me out, so this might be quite familiar to you, but I think a lot of those skills in history transfer nicely over to classics. So for a written source, which is what we've been mainly looking at in Term 1, we want to be thinking about the origin, purpose, value, and limitations of that source, and then write about what we find from that. So in terms of the origin, where does it come from? What sort of piece of writing is it? Is it a letter? Is it a historical text? Is it a biography? Is it a poem? Is it a play? Anything along those lines. Where in the Roman Empire does it come from? Does it come from Rome itself? Does it come from Italy? Does it come from the provinces? Who is the author? Do you know them? I'm hoping that we'll be able to read and learn about lots of the main authors from ancient Rome over the course of the next two terms. So hopefully you'll recognize them. What do you know about them? When did they write it? And it sort of overlaps with when was this work published. So were they writing during the Roman Republic? Were they writing during the Empire? Who was the emperor at the time? This may also have an effect. Purpose. So why are they writing this source? Are they doing it to entertain? Are they doing it to inform? Are they doing it to promote a cause? That is going to shape its message. And what is that general message? What are they trying to tell us about? What are they trying to convince us of? Value. The basic question you're going to need to answer is, what does it tell us about the topic that we've been given? How useful do you think that information is? In the exam, certainly it is going to be useful in a particular way. So evaluating that will be helpful. Think back to what you already know about this area of the topic. How does this compare, contrast? Is this a good example? How does that compare to a bad example? And so on. And when you're comparing and contrasting sources in the exam, how is it similar or different to the other sources you've been given? Finally, limitations. How reliable is this source? You might know about the author, so you might have an idea of their biases and their hang-ups. Perspective. Probably going to come from an upper class man, an upper class Roman man, probably not going to come from a woman or a slave. That's going to shape its message. So what do we need to keep in mind when we're reading it? If it's a visual source, and generally you get two written and two visual sources, different types of artworks and buildings and that kind of thing, framework you can use is describe, explain, contextualize. So what exactly do you see? Specific details are going to be your quotes. when you're looking at an artwork or an artifact. What do you think is going on? And we're going to be looking at different examples of sculpture and frescoes and all kinds of things to look at symbolism and pose and gestures and that kind of thing, and what they've reflected to the Romans. Then put it into context, same sort of thing. When, where, who in the Roman Empire does it come from? What impact is that going to have? How does it fit in with what you already know and what the other sources are? So these are all questions to ask yourself when you're looking at a source. My plan is that we're going to go through this process quite mechanically at first as we're getting used to it, and then it will get to the stage where you guys are a bit more automatic and can do this on the fly, because remember, you're writing 3 essays in 3 hours, so you're not going to have a whole lot of time to sit down and plan. In terms of tackling your a Section B essay, here's a bit of a framework you can use. So firstly, keep it really simple. Don't worry about an introduction, and write 1 good paragraph per source. Aim to do 3 of them well. When I've looked, and you can see on NZQA's website, top scholars, outstanding scholarship exemplars, and scholarship exemplars, the really good ones only do 3, and they still get really good marks. So don't work any harder than you need to. Remember, you've got to do 3 essays in 3 hours. So what you can do is briefly explain what the source is. So what is it? What does it show us? Identify what the main idea is. Make sure that you're relating it to the exam question. Then you want to kind of briefly summarize what you know about that belief and how it's shown in the resource. So pick out very specific aspects, either short quotations if it's a written source, or detailed evidence if it's a visual source, and explain what they show us about that belief. If you're on to source 2 or source 3, start comparing and contrasting. Can you identify a similarity or difference? Why is this? Then make sure, as you should do in any essay, link back to the question. And in this case, how is this source enhancing our understanding? So that's very briefly what we talked about today. What I need from you guys is to go onto classwork in Google Classroom and have a look at the options. I understand that Thursdays aren't good for a lot of us. I'm proposing a change to Mondays. I believe that Year 12s and 13s are free, period 6 on a Monday, so please let me know if that works for you for a tutorial day, or after school. If you can do both, say both. If you can do neither, say neither. And if you could do that by Friday lunchtime, then that will allow me to come up with a plan for Monday if needed. All right, thank you guys. Have a good one, and I'll catch up with you soon.